The days following Seraphine's cryptic words weighed heavily on Callum. He couldn't shake the feeling that something deep was shifting between them, something he couldn't understand. It wasn't just about learning how to drive anymore. It was about something much larger, something that had to do with his own fate, and maybe even Seraphine's. Every lesson was more difficult than the last. At first, Callum had thought that mastering the vehicle was the hardest part. But as time passed, he realized that the true challenge wasn't just controlling the machine, it was controlling himself. Seraphine pushed him harder than anyone had before, forcing him to face his deepest fears. He had been hesitant at first, not fully understanding the method behind her teaching. But with each lesson, he began to grasp the depth of her approach. She wasn't just teaching him to control the vehicle, she was teaching him to control his emotions, his thoughts, his very essence. If he could master that, then perhaps, just perhaps, he could break the curse that haunted his family. But the more he learned, the more the question lingered in his mind, why had Seraphine been chosen to teach him? There was something about her, a secret that seemed to slip through the cracks in her usually calm exterior. Callum had seen moments of vulnerability in her, glimpses of something deep inside her that she tried to hide. He couldn't help but feel that they were more alike than he had first realized. One evening, after another exhausting lesson, Callum stood by the vehicle, feeling the cool night air on his skin. Seraphine had already left for the evening, but her words lingered in the air. "There's more at stake than you realize." What did she mean by that? What could be more at stake than the curse that had been placed on his family? Every night, he dreamed of the same thing. His family trapped in an endless cycle of pain and loss, the curse always looming over them. He couldn't allow that to happen to him. But then, there was the other part of the dream, the part where Seraphine was standing beside him. She never said anything in those dreams. She simply looked at him with those piercing eyes, eyes that seemed to understand him in a way no one else ever had. The next day, Seraphine arrived earlier than usual, her expression unreadable. Callum noticed that her eyes were darker than before, as if she had been carrying something heavy for a long time. She barely spoke as they prepared for the lesson, her silence making Callum uneasy. "Are you ready?" she finally asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Callum nodded, trying to hide the unease that was building in his chest. "I think so." She stepped back, observing him carefully. "Then let's begin." The lesson was harder today, more intense than ever. Seraphine pushed him to drive faster, to navigate more complicated turns, and to control the power of the vehicle with more precision. The magic of the vehicle surged through him, and for a moment Callum felt like he was truly in control. He wasn't just driving the machine, he was one with it. But as the lesson continued, Callum noticed something strange. Seraphine was no longer giving him instructions. She was watching him, her gaze intense and filled with something he couldn't quite place. She seemed distant, as though she was lost in her own thoughts. Suddenly, Callum slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding. He had felt it, a shift in the air, a sudden pressure that hadn't been there before. "What's wrong?" Seraphine asked, her voice sharp. Callum took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. I felt something, like something was pulling me." Seraphine didn't respond immediately. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You felt it?" she repeated softly, almost to herself. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Callum's heart raced, his mind spinning. "What do you mean? What's happening?" Seraphine's expression softened for just a moment before she turned away, walking slowly toward the edge of the training ground. "There's something you don't know, Callum," she said quietly, not looking at him. "Something I've kept hidden from you." Callum followed her, his curiosity and anxiety growing by the second. "What is it? What are you hiding from me?" Seraphine turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "It's about your family." "And the curse." Callum froze. The curse. It was the reason he had come to her in the first place, the reason he had agreed to the lessons. But Seraphine had never spoken about it directly. Now it seemed as though she was about to reveal everything. "What about the curse?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Seraphine hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. I didn't just choose you to teach. I knew about the curse. I knew it would come for you eventually. Callum felt a chill run down his spine. What are you talking about?
You knew?
She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and regret. I'm not just a teacher. I'm part of the reason the curse exists. The words hit Callum like a blow. What do you mean? How are you connected to it? Seraphine's gaze dropped to the ground, and for a moment she looked like a completely different person. Vulnerable, lost, and uncertain. I was once tasked with making sure the curse didn't break. I was part of the spell that trapped your family, and She stopped, her voice breaking. I never wanted any of this. Callum felt his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to feel anger, to rage at her for being part of the curse that had ruined his family. But instead, all he felt was a deep sense of confusion. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me? Seraphine met his eyes, her expression full of sorrow. Because I didn't want you to hate me. I didn't want you to see me as the enemy. I thought I could help you break the curse. But now I'm not sure if it's even possible. Callum struggled to process what she was saying. His mind was a storm of conflicting emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, and something else he couldn't name. But amidst it all, there was a single, undeniable truth. He still cared for her. Despite everything, despite the curse and the betrayal, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward Seraphine. I don't know what to believe anymore, he said quietly, his voice raw. But I need to know the truth. If there's a way to break the curse, I'll do whatever it takes. Seraphine looked at him, her expression softening. There is a way, but it won't be easy. It will require both of us, and it will require you to face things you've been running from. Callum nodded, determination settling in his chest. I'm ready. I'll do whatever it takes. For the first time in a long while, Seraphine's face broke into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Then let's start. Callum had always been told that the road ahead was never easy, but no one had ever explained just how steep, unpredictable, and treacherous the path could be. It wasn't just about driving. In Etherian, driving was something far beyond the simple art of steering a vehicle. It was magic, alive, and dangerous. In the kingdom of Etherian, the art of driving had been passed down for centuries, an ancient magic that controlled the very forces of the earth, air, fire, and water. The one who mastered it held the power to shape the land itself, to make the winds blow in their favor and the earth bend to their will. And those who failed, those who couldn't control the vehicle, would never be the same. Callum had always dreamed of becoming a master of this art, but it had always felt out of reach, something only those with royal blood or extraordinary skill could attain. He had no noble lineage, no powerful friends, only a family cursed by fate. The curse that had been passed down through generations hung over him like a shadow, making him feel like a mere pawn in the kingdom's cruel game. It was on the eve of his 21st birthday when Callum learned of a chance to change everything. The great driving mistress Seraphine, known for her unmatched skills and secretive ways, had agreed to take on a new student. He had heard rumors of her before, whispers of her ability to teach anyone, no matter their background, how to tame the impossible. And that's why Callum found himself standing before her on a crisp morning, uncertain but determined to face the challenge ahead. Seraphine was waiting for him, her dark eyes piercing through him as he stepped into the training ground. The place was unlike any Callum had ever seen, a secluded area outside the kingdom, where the earth seemed to hum with power. The sky above was clear, but the air felt thick with the promise of magic. "You've come?" Seraphine said, her voice calm and firm, a sharp contrast to the nervous fluttering in Callum's chest. "I've come to learn," he replied, trying to mask the nerves in his voice. She nodded, her gaze never leaving him. "Then you must leave everything else behind. Forget the past. Forget your fears. You must be fully here, or you will never succeed." Callum felt the weight of her words. It wasn't just about learning to drive a vehicle. It was about confronting his deepest fears, his uncertainty, and the curse that threatened to define his future. Seraphine led him to a vehicle, a sleek, silver machine that looked like it was made of both metal and magic. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, its shape shimmering in the sunlight as if it were part of the air itself. "This," she said, "is no ordinary machine. It is an extension of your power. You will learn to guide it, but you must also learn to guide yourself. The road ahead will be as difficult as you make it." Callum was filled with awe. He had seen machines like this in the royal court, but they were usually reserved for the elite. The fact that he was standing before one now made him feel like he was stepping into another world. She stepped back and crossed her arms, watching him carefully. "Now get in." He obeyed without hesitation, feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread as he sat behind the wheel. His hands rested on the smooth surface, and he could feel a strange energy coursing through the car, as if it were alive beneath his fingertips. Seraphine stood at the side, her arms still crossed. "The first lesson is simple," she said. "Focus, clear your mind, and listen. Don't think about what you want to do. Let the vehicle become part of you. You must ease into it." Callum's brow furrowed at her words. "Ease into it?" he repeated, not sure what she meant. "Yes." "Don't force anything," she continued, her voice steady. "The more you try to control it with force, the more it will slip through your grasp. Feel it. Let it move with you. Only then can you move forward." Callum took a deep breath. His fingers tightened around the wheel. He had heard of the art of driving, but it was one thing to hear about it, and another to experience it. He focused, trying to quiet the storm of thoughts in his mind. The world around him faded as he shut his eyes for a moment, listening. The hum of the machine grew louder, as though the car was waiting for him to make his first move. He gently pressed the pedal, allowing the car to inch forward. The vehicle responded with a soft rumble, almost as if it were alive, its power vibrating through his body. For a moment, Callum felt a surge of confidence, but then the car jolted, throwing him off balance. Panic rose in his chest, and his hands gripped the wheel too tightly. He felt the magic within the machine resist him, pushing against his control. "Remember," Seraphine's voice broke through the tension. "Ease into it," the words repeated in his mind. And slowly, hesitantly, he loosened his grip. He released some of the pressure he was putting on the car, allowing it to respond to him instead of forcing it to obey. The car shifted smoothly forward, and Callum exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Seraphine's gaze softened for a moment as she observed him. "You're learning, but don't get too comfortable. There's much more ahead." Callum nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. The idea that this car, this machine, was connected to his own power felt surreal. But there was something deeper in Seraphine's words that troubled him. Was it just the car she meant when she said, "Ease into it," or was there something more she wasn't saying? The days passed, and each lesson left Callum both exhausted and exhilarated. Seraphine's approach was unorthodox. She never told him exactly what to do, instead guiding him to discover it for himself. Her presence was both comforting and distant, and though her eyes never left him during his lessons, there was always an air of mystery about her, as if she were hiding something. But it wasn't just the lessons that disturbed Callum. It was the strange feeling he had whenever he was near her. There was a pull, something magnetic, something that made him long for her presence and yet fear it at the same time. He didn't understand why he was so drawn to her, or why every time she spoke to him his heart would race in ways he couldn't explain. Seraphine, for all her cool detachment, also seemed to be hiding something, a secret that, Callum felt, might be the key to his own family's curse. He could sense it in the way her words sometimes wavered, in the briefest moments when her calm exterior cracked just enough to let him glimpse the depth of her inner struggle. One evening, after the sun had set, Callum found himself standing beside the car, lost in thought. The wind was gentle, and the air felt thick with the energy of magic, as though the very world around him was holding its breath. Seraphine approached him then, her steps light and measured. She was silent for a long moment before speaking. "You're not just learning how to drive," she said softly. "You're learning how to let go." Callum turned to face her. There was something in her eyes, something he couldn't quite decipher. "Let go of what?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched him with an intensity that made him feel like she was seeing right through him. Finally, she said, "Of everything. Of the past. Of the curse. The weight of her words hit him hard. Could she really know what he was thinking? Was she, too, a prisoner of the same curse? Before he could speak, Seraphine turned and began to walk away. "Tomorrow we'll begin again," she called back over her shoulder. "Ease into it, Callum. But be careful. There's more at stake than you realize."